As a wallpaper, that's pretty much the killer app at that time. But then we start thinking, well, what if we were to make that picture accessible over the wireless network? Wouldn't that be interesting? So it was a cross between wireless technology and having a camera on the phone. Whereas you take a picture and save it on the wallpaper, that's kind of cool, back in 2001. Why don't we allow for that picture to fly over the air to someone else's phone? That would be interesting. So we came back from Japan with that epiphany that says that, well, we might have an opportunity to use this network to move pictures. At 80 kilobits per second, you can move a picture, okay? So we ran to this entrepreneur, his name is Felipe Khan. Anyone knows about Turbo C++ or Turbo C compiler? Yeah? Cool. So Felipe is the guy that wrote Turbo C++ and Turbo Pascal. So he's a cool French guy. And he's a very, very good sailor. Yeah. He races competitively as well. So he's a cool guy. So Felipe had a child. At that time, he sold off his company called Border International to a company called Inspire, I think. So he sold off and he became a millionaire. And he got a lot of time, and one of the things he did was to have a baby, which is a good thing. So he had a baby. His family's in France. He wanted to share the picture of the baby to his family in France. So he had his engineer solder his camera. He's an engineer, right? So he had his engineer solder his camera to one of our laptop with one of our data cards to transmit the picture to France. So that's how geeky Felipe is. He didn't want to go home and load the picture. He wanted to take a picture and transmit it through the laptop over our CDMA network to France. That was pretty cool. So we know Felipe. So we asked Felipe, said, hey, we heard that you built this interesting prototype that allows you to transmit this picture. Why don't we just commercialize your prototype and build a picture messaging experience? So that's the first step. That's the original picture mail. So we created that in 2002. So picture mail was an overnight success. We were able to launch picture mail. Basically, as I go back to this earlier proposition to you, is that your wireless network can never compete with wireline. So we don't compete. We say that with our wireless network, you take a picture with the camera, and in few seconds time, that picture can show up on your friend's camera. That's the value proposition that a wireline guy cannot give you. So that's something that we can explain to grandma. If you go to grandma and say, hey grandma, buy this data card from us and you get 80 kilobits per second, wouldn't it be cool? Well, grandma's going to tell you to do something else. But in this case, you give this phone to grandma and say, grandma, you take a picture of your grandkid or take a picture of your birthday party. In seconds time, your grandkids get to see that picture and vice versa. Your grandkid has a birthday party, you get to see that picture right away as well. Grandma can relate to that. So picture mail as a product, we charge $5 US per month. But in order to have picture mail product, you have to pay $10 to get the data plan. So in essence, that one single product, we make $15 per month per subscriber. And it was the most phenomenal success that we have in our company's history. So that's one lesson to be learned there. What is that? Innovation happens when you cross-link disciplines. When you try to innovate, you have to look beyond changing, you have to change paradigm. You can only change paradigm when you cross disciplines. So that's another lesson that I learned from that exercise. So from that point on, there was no point of no return for me because I had a fundamental belief that software is what makes the difference. Software is going to bring out the value of hardware and network. Network and hardware is interesting and it's table stakes, but it's software that brings life to it. That's an important lesson learned. So that's the turning point of my career. Check that off. So from that point on, certainly we have a lot of interesting opportunities. The company was quite successful. In fact, one of the fastest growth in any wireless launch in history on Earth with the Sprint PCS network. One thing to sustain that growth is to continue to bring more applications to people's life. So one thing we got right at that point was that we learned about picture messaging as an application experience. We deliver the experience, and we continue to give people more. What else did we give them? We give them games. And Sprint was a pioneer of J2ME games. We work with Sun Microsystem, the creator of Java, and help them with the J2ME specification and actually put J2ME into devices, and we were the first to launch J2ME games on devices. We then launched mobile music. We then upgrade our network to from 1XRTT to so-called 3G at 200, 400 kilobit per second. So we launched mobile video. So those are interesting things that we did. And through all these exercises, the company asked me to head up the innovation program to ensure that all these core ideas continue, be part of the pipeline. So that's how I evolved my job, or transformed my job from the guy that ran infrastructure to the guy that built the architecture for the wireless network to the guy that head up innovation at Sprint. So that so if you look at my career at Sprint, 15 years, really, I have 5 different jobs. So I just described the first 3 jobs to you. But 15 years is a long time, so let me talk about the next 2 jobs. So as part of the innovation program that I was leading, I led innovation at Sprint for about 5 years. And it was really very fulfilling 5 years for me, because I was able to really go back to my childhood dream of using technology to make an impact in people's lives. So one of the numerous interesting, cool things that we've done in the innovation program, one of the cool things that we did was to look at what's next after 3G. There you go. I'm going to answer the next 2 questions real quick. So what's next after 3G? So that's one of our research projects. So we looked at multiple technologies at that time, and that was 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And we look at WiMAX. We look at the time, very early stages, discussion of LTE, IP wireless, next generation CDMA, so on and so forth. And so how do we arrive at the decision of WiMAX? Because that's how I launched my 4G career at Sprint, was to recommend the 4G technology being WiMAX, and then we certainly launched our network using WiMAX. So how do we arrive at that conclusion? Well, if you look at technology, IP wireless and next generation CDMA is actually very compelling. Because for Sprint, CDMA is a natural upgrade path. We are on CDMA already. We started with 1XRTT. We've gone with EVDO, which is asymmetrical. We've gone from EVDO to EVDO Ref-A, which is symmetrical. The difference is that asymmetrical meaning you have more downlink than your uplink. Symmetrical means that you have the same amount of uplink and downlink. Why is that interesting? Well, because you want to do video conference, right? 2-way video, you have to have symmetrical network. So for us, upgrading to CDMA, next generations makes sense, right? Basically, from our perspective, we basically upgraded the network cards and the base stations with a new chipset from Qualcomm, then we're in business. We made the bold decision to not upgrade to the next generation CDMA and gone to WiMAX. Well, for 2 reasons. Number one, CDMA, the royalty of CDMA is quite high, which directly increases your cost structure. If our goal is to democratize internet access, then you cannot stay on the same cost curve and allow for the technology to be more accessible. It's economically unfeasible. So we feel that from an economic standpoint, we have to break out from the CDMA cost curve. And the second is that we look at WiMAX. What got us excited about WiMAX is the ecosystem around WiMAX. Because WiMAX fundamental premise is basically Wi-Fi done at a broad scale. So WiMAX is basically IEEE technology. Technically speaking, it's IEEE 802.16.e. So when you have a technology that is an IEEE standard that gives you scale, economy of scale, and gives you standardization. If you look at the PC industry, why is the PC industry so successful? Well, PC industry is basically an exercise of scale of IEEE technologies. Most of the parts in the PC is IEEE standards. That's how you get plug and play. When you plug and play, you can grow ecosystem. When you grow ecosystem, you drive costs down. It's very simple. And when cost is down, pickup will go up through the roof. Right? That's why PC is pretty much everywhere. So, looking back at WiMAX, number one, it allows us to break out from the cost curve of CDMA. Number two, it gives us an international standard IEEE ecosystem to drive costs down and build ecosystem as well in terms of new devices, new peripherals, and so on. So at the time, we make a very radical decision and recommend it to the board to use WiMAX as our solution, which requires to build a brand new network, as opposed to just upgrading the existing network. But I think we're bold enough to know that